Thanks so much. So I'm Hattie Willis and I work at Rainmaking Venture Studio as mentioned. And I guess the background of why I'm here to host this panel is that I have a background in entrepreneurship education. So my previous role in Rainmaking, I was head of training, designing and delivering programs that went across corporates to upskill their employees to start new businesses. And I designed and ultimately launched our own digital learning platform. So I'm very passionate about entrepreneurship skills spreading. And with me, I have two other very passionate people. So we've also got Foong. Foong is an entrepreneur. She's founder and CEO of Matchable, as we've mentioned. And what they're doing there also really touches on this space because she's reimagining what volunteering means and trying to really fulfill employees so that they don't feel they're missing the purpose in their work. And I think that's something we'll definitely touch on more as we go. But also Foong has a background herself in a corporate. So she's lived in PwC for 13 years as a tax accountant. So, she's felt the hard side of being in a corporate as well. So it can give us those different perspectives. And Christian, I'll translate for those of you who, like me, have terrible Danish, is a CEO for the Danish Foundation for Entrepreneurship. And they're all about promoting entrepreneurship education and STEM education across Denmark and Greenland. And they're doing that really from kindergarten through to PhD and then across the Danish society. So an easy job for you, Christian, very honed in. And we've got the hard task. We've got just under 26 minutes to give you all the tools you need to set the future of work. And in the audience, we've got students, we've got investors, regulators, founders. So we're going to try and hone this as much as we can, but the best way to help is please do send those questions so we can focus where you want us most. But we're going to start with, I guess, the key question very broadly. Foong, I'll come to you first, but what skills do you think that we need for Industry 4.0? And on that, does everyone need those skills to the same level?
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Hattie, and thanks for the very kind introduction. Definitely felt like I lived at PwC for 13 years. So yeah, it's really nice to be introduced. I'm introduced as an entrepreneur. So I always kind of say I'm a founder, but it's nice to hear someone else say it as well. So yeah, I suppose in terms of skills for the future, I think definitely something that we subscribe to at Matchable and that I really believe is that in the future, the best skill you can have is the ability to learn, just because the pace of change at the moment is so rapid. New kinds of jobs are coming up, left, right and center every year. Still, like the job of an influencer, probably to me still, I'm probably the generation that is on the fringes of not understanding how that works. But I think there's all these jobs that are coming up that you really couldn't have imagined that are resulting from these really fast changes in tech, also obviously like global events, like things like COVID. And the best skill we could have is just to be adaptable, really. So being creative, being agile, and just being open actually to learning the new skills that you'll need in order to survive actually going forward, I think is really important.
Amazing. And we'll come back to how we do that in practice, because when we come to those softer skills and creativity, imagination, adaptation, it's quite hard to pin down how we actually build those and whether everyone understands we need them. But before we go there, Christian, what do you think of the future skills and what levels do we need?
I think I'm quite in line with what Foong said in the beginning, that skills for being adaptive, we call them entrepreneurial skills. I think it's key, especially in these times. We have seen that either individuals or companies who are not entrepreneurial is not able to change course when tough gets tough, then they have a really difficult time, whereas others are able to turn to a new customer base, a new way of selling. They have a far better chance of successing. But I would also say, of course, this is a TechBBQ. Having digital skills and technological skills, other things becomes even more urgent. And I would say that times like these, they have definitely shown that companies and individuals who have skills that make them able to handle digital obstacles, going viral, etc., stands just far better chances than individuals and companies that who don't. But I think there's some issues here that are also more personal, that are not so skill based, but more maybe personal based. And one of them, I think, is that we should all learn to be accepting changes, being also risk takers, or accepting that things might go wrong. So it seems so evident that everybody should be accepted to failure, and would embrace that when it goes sideways, we're able to accept it and find another path. But we also see that young people are struggling with increasing amount of stress and increasing amount of lack of self-confidence, etc. So I think one of these also softer skills, besides the more traditionals, are things we should look into also as a society. How do we as a society embrace and teach our young people that failure is also an option, and trying new stuff out is part of their journey, and would be even more so in the future, from my point of view, at least.
I couldn't agree more. I think when I used to run a lot of workshops and trainings, the main thing I was trying to impart, and not just to children, I think as adults, we need to relearn it, is that actually, if we define failure as I failed and I learned nothing, then sure, that's a failure. You failed. But if I don't get something right and I learn how to do it better, or I learn early enough not to do it at all, to me, that's success. And I think what we're not very good at, and kind of leading on to the next question, is that we sit in the luxury position. I think the three of us of, at the moment, what we're doing is very entrepreneurial. I work in a studio building ventures. Christian, you're spreading entrepreneurship far and wide, and Foong, this is your day-to-day as well. But actually, for a lot of people, who are either trying to get on the job ladder and get these skills recognized, or who are within a corporate and trying to shout that they need to be rewarded, not everyone, I don't think, yet has an awareness that, how even to recognize and reward it. How does it show up on a CV? How do I test for it in an interview? And so my second question is, do you think there's enough awareness that these are the right skills? And if not, what needs to happen for it to become recognized? And is there things that people in the audience, if they're working or looking for a job, could be trying to do themselves? So again, Foong, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think there's definitely a recognition, and that innovation and all these kinds of skills, soft and hard skills, like that you need for the future, are the ones that you'll need. But I feel like the systems that are in place haven't really caught up with them. So especially, and the bigger the organization, obviously, the harder it is to update those systems, because exactly when you guys were saying, at the moment, what happens is you get rewarded for doing a good job. You don't get rewarded for failing and trying again, or trying something new. Definitely not in a very traditional company, or in a very traditional and at the same time, there is that thing, you want to be good at something. You don't want to be the person who fails all the time. So there is something around that balance, I think. And when I think back to appraisals I've had in the past, you're obviously always rewarded for making money, or for actually succeeding at things, usually making money, but that kind of stuff. And so that drives a lot of, I think, the behaviors. So even though I think there's something around, obviously we talk about, for us, when we're in impact, like purpose washing and all that kind of stuff, there's something around actually, I don't know if it's even a thing, but like entrepreneurship or innovation washing, but something where there's a disconnect between what people say they know needs to happen in order to survive, even as companies or staff in the future, and what actually happens in practice. So I think it will take a bit of time for all of those kinds of things to catch up, really.
Christian, do you have any tips? So maybe you're trying to do this, this is your job, right?
Yeah, but it also puzzles me a little bit that we have a conference here with the overall theme of resilience. That we need to have companies that are resilient to outside challenges and new opportunities, and we also want our future job force to carry the same kind of traits, so that they are able to find ways of going about their lives. But still, if we look at how we treat students today, we still grade them based on sticking away from taking risks. So we don't want them to take risk. We want them to follow the path that provides them a good grade. And when we hire people, we also pretty much want them to carry out the job that they're set out to do. And we are not, at least for big corporates, I guess you could talk about this, Foong. I guess you want them to follow the traces that are put out there for you, which doesn't provide resilience neither on a personal level nor on a company level. So I think we have a big job in society in order to provide these more resilient employees and also a future part of the workforce. I do believe, however, that skills like entrepreneurial skills can be taught. So we do that every day, which of course is part of being resilient, that you're able to see opportunities, carry them out, know what the risks are associated, etc. And we can also teach the digital skills. And those can all be taught in school, and we can also teach them to employees, etc. So there are some of these skills that are more easy to go about, which is just mandatory for any kind of educational settings today. So it's not kind of a can we do it or can we not do it? It's a mandatory thing, or it should be at least. There are other parts of how we carry out both an educational system, but also how we treat employees that has less to do with resilience, from my point of view, at least.
Yeah, I think I've been a proponent for a while of kind of core part of corporate-wide training being the fundamental skills of entrepreneurship. Not because everyone within an organization should be an entrepreneur. You'd break the organization because it wouldn't be able to pay for itself to carry on those activities. But people do, and I think when we talk about the skills of entrepreneurship, everyone's heard the buzzwords, I'm guessing right here. You've heard agile, you've heard lean, you've maybe heard customer development, but those are all quite broad concepts. So maybe, Christian, before we go on, we could also drill down on specifically what do you see as entrepreneurship skills?
So for me, it's kind of knowing when we take the risk, what are the risks? It's also about carrying it out. So not only considering creativity being another skill set of entrepreneurship, but also being able to carry it out and make it happen. Also knowing about what resources do you need to have in order to get to your final goal. But I think I'm returning to the resilient part of the conversation here. I think one of the things we haven't considered in regards to resilience is also awareness of being born global. It's also about considering when you develop a company, it cannot only be for the money. It needs, at least in these times, looking into the future, they will become great. I think if you consider the SDGs as part of your company, your resilience will also be greater from my point of view. So the customers look for companies that do not violate its environment, etc. So I think there's some new aspects to the resilient part, which is not only the traditional entrepreneurial skills, but it's also something that has to do with the world that we live in.
Yeah, and that ability to kind of see what the customer needs and what they care about and adapt. As you said, they're not going to let us get away with being companies that don't care about things like the SDGs. I mean, from that's where you sit, right, which is that as well as the skills that employers can expect from employees, like there's a flip side to it, which is what do employees need and expect from employers. So I mean, maybe you can touch on that briefly, and then we've got our first questions just come in as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so we're definitely seeing actually one of our core markets where we're getting a lot of new customers actually on board is in the kind of smaller tech scale up market. So actually kind of 50 to 500 people, usually like Series A plus. And the reason that these companies really get us is because, well, first of all, I guess there's kind of like a twofold thing. In the sense that it's usually like HR or whoever is organizing the stuff doesn't have capacity to do volunteering, but they're also getting like a massive push from employees who actually really do want to give back, and they kind of expect that now from companies, and that like, what is the social thing that you're doing, what is your sustainable supply chain, what does it look like, but also how do we contribute to that. And I think there's a bit of a generational thing, definitely, in terms of we just released a blog piece about like millennials and Gen Z and their expectations as they come into the workforce, and it's exactly around that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. And we've got our first question from the audience here. So what skill of the future do you want to focus on in the future yourself? Christian, I'll come to you first on this one.
So actually, we have just in the Danish Foundation for Entrepreneurship, we've just been looking into our next 5 year of a future, and one of the a few of the topics that we find extremely relevant to touch upon, which we have not addressed in such a depth before, is one of them is for entrepreneurship to have a purpose. So purpose-driven entrepreneurship, both because it engages young people to have a purpose. But also we believe that having a purpose with your business also create a better business. Yes. So either it has an environmental focus, or it has a climate focus, or it has a focus for helping other people, etc. We see that capital is also turning that way. So we believe so entrepreneurship with the purpose is a key topic for us. Another key topic for us in regards to entrepreneurship is diversity. And gender diversity is one. I'm happy that we are not an all-female panel discussing this, or an all-male panel. It's great that we have a little diversity. So female and male diversity we see in Denmark, for instance. There are far more males that create companies than there is girls, and that needs to change. And also diversity in regards to where do you live? Is it only a big city thing? Or is it also something for society that smaller cities should engage in, or people living there, students living there should engage in? But also that who your parents are. We know there is, I guess that most startups or founders, they have parents who are also have established companies. So we're looking into also creating role models that are not only your parents. So diversity is one thing, and then entrepreneurship with a purpose is another key theme.
Yeah, and I think actually picking up on that point, I mean, obviously you've also got racial diversity, can't be ignored. And it's, I think one of the key things that I think is a skill, just as a side note, which I am trying to learn a lot more about myself at the moment, is anti-racism as an active skill that you build and that you cultivate and you keep learning around. And that being something that isn't just a character trait, you're racist or you're not racist, but actually a skill that you cultivate and that is crucial for any work you do. And it's something that I'm really trying to work on and build. There are some amazing resources out there. But Foong, before I go off on the other skills I'm trying at the moment, what are your skills of the future you're trying to build yourself?
Oh my God, literally, I tell you, every day as a founder is like school day, if I'm honest. I can't pick one skill. It's literally trying to learn them all. At the moment, the skill I'm trying to master is fundraising. So that's definitely a skill on its own. I guess just generally, I think, like on a personal level, really, I guess if it is about me, I guess, Hattie, what you touched on, actually being stronger and standing up for things that I believe in, and actually being actively vocal about things rather than, kind of being a bit more passive, I think is probably one I'd like to cultivate more in the future. Because I think as well, like, it's good to, I think I've been, I've got an Asian background, so I'm often like, I was brought up to be like seen and not heard. So I guess like now I'm trying to, I think it's definitely good to express an opinion, and especially when it is on things like racism and that kind of stuff. I think it makes a real difference when you can actually vocalize, what you believe in.
Yeah, and an individual, and again, as Christian alluded to, at a company level, right? The companies that succeed are actually taking a big stand on these issues publicly as well. So, it translates there. We've got another question here. How can we make young people more interested in entrepreneurship? Christian, you've already touched on tying it to purpose. Are there some other ways as well?
Yeah, but a clear way to go about it is, of course, for them to live it out in schools. It's we have done tons of research on this topic, and it's very clear evidence that if students meet entrepreneurship during their schooling, it increases their chances of starting a company substantially. that we know that role models are key for individuals to carry out. And our parents are the biggest role models, but our teaching, our school system is the second best option we have for creating role models. So a clear way to go about it is, of course, to make sure that it happens in all degrees of schooling, from kindergarten to PhD. And we see clear evidence that it actually changed our society substantially. Just as an anecdotal note, the numbers of young people who start companies in Denmark has grown substantially within the last couple of years. So we now see there's even more startups which founders under 25 years old than ever before, which has followed the lead of how much it takes place as part of their schooling at primary, secondary, university, etc. So that's an easy way to go about it. Of course, it looks very different in kindergarten than it does at PhD level, but it does take place there.
And I think, the other one for me is giving them chances to get involved in companies. So I started entrepreneurship really young. I haven't just aged very well. I am actually quite young. But, I got into it because someone, while I was working, my first year of university, I met and offered me a chance to, work on his startup as like the third person. And the amount you learn when, you're just with the other two founders and that's it. And the amount of license you get, I got addicted just because I could try stuff and fail. And the license to be creative and for it to be okay when it didn't work was extraordinary. And, that I was very lucky that the founder I was working with also, was an entrepreneurship educator himself. So he got Lean Startup, he taught it, he could live it in his coaching of me. But I think, it's really important that, startups give young people the chance, even if they don't have the experience. We're seeing this horrible trend with more and more experience being asked of people before they can start an entry-level position, and it cuts people out. And then unpaid internships are awful. Yes, we know you're a startup, you're really strapped for cash, but you are cutting people off from an incredible opportunity who can't afford to do something for free, who need to be making money. So for me, that's another really clear one. And we've got a couple more questions here as well. Sorry, Christian, do you want to reply to that while I go to the next question?
No, I'm just considering your talk about apprenticeship. We have actually just initiated a project, or it's been going on for a while now, where we, instead of putting students into apprenticeship in large corporates, which has been the typical thing for students to do as part of the university degree, we have established some options where they can either be apprentice in their own company, or in somebody else's startup. So if you're not a founder by heart, or do not have the idea at the moment, or just want to get going with it in a quick, it's actually a good way to become an apprentice or trying it out in a startup. So we have good experiences with that already, but of course on a small scale.
And perhaps our final question, I'm afraid, because we're nearing the end of our time. But Foong, you mentioned it's important to consider the employee's need for social good when you're an employer. Do you think that's the responsibility of the employee or the employer to take the most initiative in that?
Oh, interesting. Really interesting. We've experienced a bit of a mixed bag, I guess. But it is, I guess, to be honest, it's both probably in reality. So it's such a cop-out answer. But as an employer, I think we've seen, which is interesting, like definitely, like I mentioned, like the younger kind of more startup companies, they kind of sort of develop a culture where, usually part of what they do is around purpose, giving employees kind of, what they need to thrive. And part of that is actually around, giving them purpose, making sure that, the company does some social good as well. So I think there's definitely that aspect of it. And as those companies become the big companies of the future, obviously it'll be kind of part and parcel of what they do. But I also think on the employee side, there is something around taking ownership of your own development, of your own, like what you think is important. And there is some kind of individual responsibility there. So if you do really, so for example, for us, like not everyone wants to volunteer as a, as a way to do good. But the people who really do want to do it, they do it, and they do a lot of volunteering. And it is something that's important to them. So I think there's a bit of both, actually, to be honest. But sorry, I could go on for a long time.
No, I would let you if we weren't running out of time. I love to talk about this. But I can strongly recommend, having worked with Foong, that if you are on either side, reach out to Matchable. They're frigging awesome. And it means your skills don't go to waste. I had an incredibly talented data analyst friend go and work in an allotment for his corporate responsibility day, and it broke my heart because he could have given so much to a social impact startup. So I think we're kind of reaching the end of our time here, but I want to just before we go to say a huge thank you to Christian and Foong, and I'm sure if you have any more questions, we're all on LinkedIn. I'm sure you can ping your questions in a mail or in a connection request if you don't have InMail, and we'll try and get back to you, and hopefully have a look and get inspired by all the entrepreneurship education stuff that's out there. There is a lot. It can be overwhelming. But yeah, just start getting involved is my best advice. So I think, does that wrap us up on time? We've got another couple of minutes. I can ask another question, but I think that's it. I might start another question if you don't tell me. I mean, the only other question we have is, on top of digital literacy, what sort of soft skill would you recommend to obtain for young people? So we can do a quick fire answer from Christian and Foong on that. Christian, hit us off first.
I should go first. No, just a short considerations when we talk about digital skills. There's a skill about learning how to use technologies, like we are using Zoom or Bella or whatever it's called at the moment, right? So we're able to consume technologies. But I think it's important that we not only teaches people to consume or being able to use and press the right buttons and understand which is which and how you behave, etc., etc. But from our point, at least, it's more important that students are also able to create and develop technologies. And of course, you need a basic understanding of odds and ends of technology in order to get to that point. But it from our experiences, you increase the learning substantially if you're able to get them to the point where they're able to create stuff, because it creates a deeper understanding also of the already existing technologies.
Amazing. And Foong? Oh, we've just been told we have no more time. That was so cruel. I'm so sorry. That was brutal of me. But again, do reach out. I'm sure Foong maybe will do a little post on LinkedIn with her answer for anyone who's interested. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been amazing. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.